Want to start by just acknowledging that we are in unprecedented times. This is a very strange time to be alive and to be in education. And that, during other times in history when things have been this disrupted, we've been able to get together and we've been able to see each other and eat food. And this time we're not. And it's very strange, and it makes connection very important at this point in time. And that includes as we start to think about how we're going to work with our students and how we're going to deliver instruction online to them. So today we're going to talk about delivering virtual SEL. Most of us are in the position of trying to figure out how to support and serve students who are at home. And I'm sure that has been a learning curve for all of us. So I'm hoping to give you a couple things today to get you started in terms of delivering virtual learning, but specifically virtual social and emotional learning. And at this time, social emotional learning is going to be very important. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about the nuances of virtual service delivery, some things you might not have thought about, understand how kids learn social and emotional skills. And that's something that a lot of this is stuff you can take back when we do go back to brick and mortar. And also I'm going to run through some sample lessons of how I deliver SEL, and I'm also filming some of these lessons and posting them. I'm using my kids because they have nothing better to do, and posting them on our blog so that people can see how you might teach these lessons. So let's start with talking about virtual service delivery. There's a huge body of evidence that shows that the online learning condition is a valid methodology. It's been studied, and there's been multi-analytic studies, and oftentimes it's better if you can pair it with in-person learning, but it's a completely valid way to learn. Conducting virtual lessons requires that people be familiar with the technology and the nuances of being online. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that because it's certainly new to me, and it's certainly new to all of us. I'm sure many of the teachers on here and staff on here have been in online meetings and in online learning seminars in the past couple of weeks. So the first thing is your district may have approved platforms. We're still required to comply with HIPAA and FERPA, and depending on your role, your district is probably going to approve specific platforms, and there's ones that are not approved. So you need to make sure that whatever you're using is HIPAA compliant or FERPA compliant, so that you're in line with that. Despite being online, we still have the same rules around reporting, around confidentiality. And so that makes it a little bit strange, because not only are we thinking about how we're interacting with the technology, but also, we're virtually in people's homes. We're seeing things, we're talking to people who are not at school, but we still have the same rights and responsibilities. Another thing to think about is how you are interacting with people, whether it's a text or video-based methodology. So text would be, email and text messaging, and video would be like this. Text is a lot better for just sharing information, but it damps down a lot of the nonverbal signals that I really think you need to teach SEL, and it also damps down our ability to really connect with people in terms of building rapport. And I really feel strongly that in this day and age, it's important during the COVID-19 shutdown for us to see people and talk to people, and not just to exchange ideas online. So I would prefer the video methodology for that as much as possible, especially for SEL. So let's talk a little bit about getting set up in terms of your environment, in terms of where you are in your home. You want to make sure that you can conduct it easily and that your privacy is preserved. And this is something that we don't think about a lot in terms of, the lighting, the sound, the other kind of things that many of us are not trained to do. And just the fact that you want your environment to be private. I mean, you could have people walk in, things in your room that you don't want people to see that give away information about you. Maybe you don't want them to know, or just things that are distracting in the background. You should have everything at your fingertips. It's much more distracting to have somebody fiddling over here and fidgeting over here when you're online than it is in person, especially if you go partly off the camera. And also where your gaze is. If I'm looking over here, looking over there, and people don't have context for where you're looking, that can also be kind of strange and distracting. So practice looking at the camera, know where your camera is, and get comfortable with it. And I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to be perfect at that today, because it's also a new condition to me. But take a minute to think about it and set it up and get the lighting right and test the sound before you get online with students. And then you want to think about how are you going to set up that student? Are they familiar with the technology? And based on the age of the student, is a family member available to help them get set up and monitor them? And are they in a situation that's private? If they're in a crowded house with a lot of people moving around and people poking their head in and watching what they're doing, it may not be the right time and place to do SEL delivery. And then just their ability to attend and participate. So, and in situations where you don't have people that are able to actually participate in, a virtual lesson, a check-in with that student to see how they're doing, just a friendly check-in, in my view, really is SEL, because so much of social emotional learning is modeling, it's connecting, it's repetition of positive experiences. That check-in has value. Even if you're not didactically teaching something, you are showing up, you are being a model, and you are presenting yourself. So understand how important that is, especially now, and especially to maintain the continuity with students, to be talking about, hey, we're going to come back. Hey, I'll see you. Maybe you don't know when you're going to see them, but I look forward to seeing you again. Just those kinds of simple things are super important. Another really important thing to think about is cultural factors. When I say cultural factors, every single person is different. Even within the same culture, different families have different cultures, and so you can't just look at somebody and go, "Oh, you're from this culture, so you do it this way," and "You're from this culture, you do it this way." Everybody's different, and you have to think about that. You have to think, for example, about how does a family feel about having a virtual visitor to their home. Some families and some cultures are much more private than others. What language is spoken in the home? And also, if you're going to be talking about things that are social and emotional, what is the family's cultural views around that? Not every, it's a very Western thing to dive into your mind and analyze your thoughts and your feelings. Not every culture does that and thinks about things in the same way that we do. So I want to talk about some of the dimensions of that. And these are various cultural dimensions that you want to think about when you're delivering an SEL instruction. And the first is individualism versus collectivism. And that's the degree to which the culture values the group versus the individual needs. So oftentimes, we're used to talking about personal achievement. We're used to talking about, your personal success. Is that part of the culture that if you're teaching someone how to do something, how are you framing that? And are you framing that in a way that's culturally appropriate for them? Power distance is the degree to which persons in society, less powerful persons, accept inequity. And that's different, in our society. In some societies, the teacher is somebody you look up to and you respect. And in other cultures, you're trying to, teachers trying to kind of come down to the kids' level. What is that like in that culture? And are they able to interact with you in a way to say, hey, hold on a second, I have a question, or I don't agree with that? Or are they more the type of person who might just accept what you say to, so that you can save face? Uncertainty avoidance is the value in which the culture puts on risk and ambiguity. How much can they tolerate that? How much value do they put on that? And how does that interface with your lessons? Masculinity, femininity, the degree to which people embrace, cultural roles around gender. That's going to be different for every culture, and how your SEL lessons and how you frame them might be different around those types of things. Time orientation, this is my term. The literature talks about Confucianism and dynamism, and I just wanted to simplify it a little bit for this in terms of is the culture immediately focused on how people are feeling and doing right now? Or are they future focused on terms of getting things accomplished that lead to things in the future? And neither one is wrong, but you want to think about that as you're teaching lessons, because a lot of our lessons are very Western in that dimension. And then also high versus low context, the degree to which communication in the culture is implied versus stated. Some cultures are very direct, this is how it is, and some cultures imply things. So you want to think about all of those as you're teaching the lesson, and there's no hard and fast rules. Every culture is different. With cultural stuff, you just really have to be thinking and considering that as you frame your lessons. So teaching SEL. When we talk about teaching SEL, we're talking about learning social and emotional skills, and we're talking about learning new habits and behaviors. And the way people learn these naturally is through modeling, like watching other adults in their environment, and through repetition and feedback in their life. So think about that for a second, because the way people don't learn it is by reading a book or getting it didactically from a lesson. But that's the way we tend to teach it. And that's not the way that I teach SEL, and that's not the way I want you to teach SEL, because what people really need to learn new habits and behaviors is that modeling, repetition, and feedback. So the things that we're going to talk about today, the lessons we're going to go through, are so much more about doing things than they are about here are 5 things you can do. I want people to do them because I want people to get that practice. So, and this is especially important with kids who have cognitive challenges or executive functioning challenges or trauma or ADHD. They're going to learn through doing, okay, and through repetition of experience. So let's talk about setting up an SEL skill. If you're going to teach an SEL skill, you're always starting by establishing rapport. So how you doing today? How are things going? Don't just dive into the teaching. Check to see how the student is doing, assess their mood, assess how things are going, spend the time to sort of check in with them and assess where they're at. And then once I get to that point, I'm going to start by introducing the skill. And I'm going to say, hey, this is what we're going to learn today. And then I'm going to talk about why it's important. So if I'm teaching something, I say, this is SEL, and this is why I think you'll really like this. This is why I think it's important. This is what I think it'll do for you. And if they're willing to get their input and then predict that positive outcome for them, this is what's going to happen. I want to get them curious about the skill. And I always say when I'm teaching something, like, I don't want you to believe everything I say. I don't want you to be a doubter. I don't want you to be an optimist. I just want you to be curious about it and see what kind of truth you can find in it. So that's kind of how I set it up. The big daddies for social emotional teaching are self-awareness and self-management. We talk about 5 things: self-awareness, self-management, social relationships, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. But really, the foundation underneath all that is the self-awareness and self-management. And that's kind of what I want to focus on a little bit today. Because if you don't have those 2 things, you are not going to be able to be successful in the others. And there's tons of stuff you can do around this. And it's really awesome for kids. So what is self-awareness? We talk about this. And you see the kids on the right here, sitting there meditating. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to do this to do self-awareness, but we all have it. And it is a control mechanism that allows people to monitor what's going on inside of them, their internal signals, interpret them correctly, and know their own patterns, their own habits, their own vulnerabilities, and their own defense mechanisms. When I say defense mechanisms, how do we protect ourselves from feeling bad? That's a psychological defense mechanism. So, but all of those things keep us from, sometimes keep us from knowing what's going on inside. And the idea of self-awareness is if I can look inside and say, you know what, I'm really anxious right now, or I'm really feeling this way right now, I have more choice. I can be intentional. But if I don't know that, I'm just going to react to it. And maybe I'm going to run from it, and maybe I'm going to pick up my phone, and maybe I'm going to go numb out in some way. But if you can't just acknowledge, hey, this is what's going on right now inside, then then that's going to control you rather than you control it. So self-awareness is getting kids to be able to do this. And this is something that is super important in the age of cell phones and media, because what do we all have in our pocket is this little regulation machine that when we have a thought or feeling, we go and we zone out to it. And so getting people to be aware of what's going on inside is super important. Okay. And then there's self-regulation, which is how we regulate. Once we understand that, hey, I'm feeling this way, or this is what's happening, that we're able to regulate 4 parts of our system, which are our thoughts, our emotion, our attention, and our physical sensations. So, so physical sensations might be adrenaline, might be the physical sensations of anxiety and things like that. So all of those things are important. So let's think about a kid who sits down and they've got a difficult assignment. What thoughts are they having? I can't do this. This is awful. And if you have those thoughts, what kind of feelings are you going to have? You're probably going to feel pretty bad. And where is your attention in that moment? It might be on, wow, this assignment's really long, or this is really hard, or look at that problem, that's really hard, or look at how stupid I am. Instead of what can I do and how can I solve this problem? And physical sensations, adrenaline, things like that. Thoughts are the primary way that people self-regulate. And by that, I mean self-talk. How do we talk to ourselves? And the important thing for kids is we can choose that. We can choose to talk to ourselves in any number of ways, but many of us have the habit of talking to ourselves in negative ways that decrease our performance. So these are the things, these are the targets for social and emotional learning: is self-regulation and self-awareness and self-regulation. Okay, so let's talk now about some sample lessons. I'm going to go through these and about how you can do these. And I'm filming these with my kids and putting them on our blog so you can see different ones. So with the self-awareness, I'm going to start by setting it up. I'm going to talk about self-awareness. What do you think that means? And I'm going to predict that positive outcome for them. What do you think the value of that is? Hey, you know what I think it is? And I'll talk a little bit. If you know about yourself, then you have more power. You have more control. Sometimes I throw in facts. There's all sorts of research about, as a matter of fact, for corporate CEOs, the people who are running the Fortune 500 companies, the number one thing that predicts their success is self-awareness. Okay, so as you go through that, sometimes I'll give people facts like that, and then I might just get the student to put themselves in a situation where they can visualize. Hey, I want you to imagine you're in this stressful situation. What's stressful for you? Maybe I know for that kid, it's math, or it's being in front of a lot of people in a classroom, or it's having to deal with something. And then I'll have them report on it. Tell me about that. And then I'll start by having them report a little bit about those 4 aspects of regulation. When you are in that situation and you're in class and you're feeling super anxious, what's your physical feeling? And I always ask the kids this question: where do you feel it in your body? So they can describe it, because I want them to be able to describe where and how they feel it. What are their thoughts? What are you thinking about during that time? And then they might connect the fact that they're saying, hey, by the way, I'm thinking, oh man, I can't do this, or I'm having these thoughts that are not productive. What are your emotions? What are you feeling? And where's your attention directed? Is it to the things you can't do or the things you could do? So I get them to do that, and then I always want to leave them, and I'll run through this a bunch of times, maybe a couple things. It doesn't have to be long. And then I'll leave them with something to do, which is have the student track a common situation at home. Now I say at home because we're all at home right now. I might do that in the classroom, but I just want them to become aware and curious about their feelings. Okay, so that's the self-awareness. And the other part I might do with that is that it can't hurt you. You know, a feeling can't hurt you. You can lean into it. You can say hi to it. You can interact with it. You don't have to run from it, because it's the running from it that leads people to behavior, that leads people to zone out, that leads people to do all kinds of things. Okay, so then the second lesson, I call it What You Thinking. I start by having students describe a challenging situation. If the student's resistant, maybe you could come up with one. And I can ask the student to write down what they're thinking and then remind them that there's no wrong answers. And then I can have them create new self-talk. And this is, so the first one being really, really about awareness. And the second one is, okay, let's really dive into that self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? And then what could you say to yourself? And then I want them to come up with some real epic thoughts, like, I can do this. I can figure this out. I'm strong enough. I'm smart enough. I can get this. I'm not going to let this defeat me. Whatever their language is around that makes them feel powerful. And they might have some resistance to this kind of thing, in terms of they might feel like they're just acting. But really, we're really talking about replacing thoughts, not with magical thinking, but with thoughts that lead into action, with thoughts that lead them to be able to do something. So, and I'm going to ask the student to do this and try this 3 times this week. Now, I never send a student off with, now you know the skill, go do it forever. What I want them to do, I just want them to do it once. If they can just be like, I'm going to try this once, then they've intentionally done a new behavior. And that intentionality is what I want. Just changing the way that it works is super important. So ask the student to do it. Ask the student to try it. Ask the student to come up with it, and then give it a shot. Okay. Lesson 3 is about tolerating emotion. This is a great one. So I asked the student to come up with a difficult scenario, and then I try to find something that they're going to react to, like blow up, throw their work, shut down. And then I discuss with them what happens. And then I try and role play that situation with them. So if it's an assignment, I'm going to put the assignment in front of them. If it's a correction, hey, you did the wrong thing, and then they blow up. And I just ask them to tolerate that emotion for 10 more seconds. If they're leaving class because they're anxious, just tolerate that for 10 more seconds. And again, it's that intentionality of doing something different just for that 10 seconds. And again, 10 seconds doesn't seem like a long time, but I want them to be really, really, really super intentional while they're doing that. And then I'm going to be like, hey, what are you going to do for that 10 seconds? And they're usually going to be like, oh man, you know what? I can tolerate it for 10 seconds. But no. Let's talk about breathing. Let's talk about self-talk. Let's talk about, the progressive muscle relaxation where you squeeze your arms. Let's talk about anything. Okay. Because what I want them to do is to be super intentional and lean into that feeling. Okay. And then I can have them practice during the week, just delaying for 10 seconds, or just, I'm going to walk away and then I'm going to come back and blow up. Or, whatever they do, as long as they're doing this toleration intentionally, it's great. And then, I always try and restrain change a little bit in terms of, hey, we'll do it for 10 seconds. Tomorrow we'll do it for 11. Now I know they might be able to do 3 minutes or 2 minutes, but I don't want to push the edge. I want to build success after success after success, especially with kids that have traumatic experiences and executive functioning difficulties. I just want to keep building success and repetition, because that's what I'm going for. Okay. So I'm practicing their tolerating that emotion 10 second delay, and then we can go to 11 seconds. Okay. The other great one is making a mistake. There's so many kids that I work with cannot make a mistake. So if I've got a student that has difficult time making a mistake, I will discuss with them how they respond to mistakes, how they feel, all the self-talk stuff. And then I'll give the student an easy assignment, an easy math work. And I'll say, hey, here's this, I'm talking 2 + 2. I want you to do this wrong. And then I'm going to mark it all up with red marks and correct it for you. And then I will role play correcting it to them. I'll give it to them, say, hey, it's wrong. Now, depending on the kid, I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to say, I might start with, here it's wrong. And then I want to practice a response of, oh, cool, I'll fix it. No problem. Okay. Now then I'll scale it up for them. And I'll say, all right, now I'm going to be meaner. And I'm going to say, you got it wrong. And I'm going to be a super mean teacher. And I'll scale up the meanness and just get them practicing going like, cool, I'll do it. Sometimes I've even had kids put on sunglasses and act all cool and just be like, I got this, I'll fix it. And that repetition of saying the words, saying them in the right intonation, saying them in a way that is calm and focused is fun. We play with it, okay? And then if it's in school, I'll have the teacher try and catch them. I'll say, you know what? We're going to get your teacher to try and get you this week by being super mean to you when you make a mistake, okay? And then they're practicing that. Okay, I got it. And again, I leave the kid with you don't have to do it yet. You might find yourself wanting to try this out next time you make a mistake and see what happens. And then, the final exam, I'll have the student deliberately make a mistake. Say, I want you to go get one wrong on this and then respond to the correction. We're not even gonna tell the teacher about it. So, we'll play with this. And again, the intentionality of playing with a symptom rather than reacting and responding to it is a huge part of it, huge part of SEL. So lesson 4 is making that mistake. And then lesson 5 is getting started. So sometimes getting started can be really difficult for kids. And that can be motivation-based or it can be executive functioning-based. Now, if you have a student that's motivation-based, I just don't feel like doing it. I know we've all felt that way. You get motivated 21 seconds after you start a task. And what I do is I say, we're just going to get started for 30 seconds, okay? And then you can stop. Or 3 minutes or whatever. But for that 30 seconds, we're just going to go, okay? And then they're already into it. Now you've already started this. So then maybe we'll do it for 45 seconds. But at least we're getting that repetition of getting started. Now, for executive functioning skills, in other words, getting started is, I don't know the first thing to do. I mean, we have kids who can't get started, not because it's motivation, but because I need to find my pencil, and then I need to read the instruction. And then I need to figure out what that means, and that's too much. I usually, scaffold like, what's the first 3 things you're going to do? Okay, I grab my pencil, I read the instructions out loud, and I ask myself a question of what the first thing I'm supposed to do is, or something like that. Some kind of structured way to do that. If the resistance is power and control based, in other words, oppositionality, I always like to pit the child against themselves. I'm like, how are you going to overcome your oppositionality? Like, how are you going to get past that? And then it's me and them against the problem rather than me against them trying to get them to do the work. So I will have the child try this a couple times and then see what happens. Again, I want them to be curious. So that is lesson 5. I want to thank everybody for coming up. I think I'm almost out of time. I'm going to answer all the questions that people have today on the blog. You feel free to reach out to me at either of these emails, and please check out the blog. We're going to be posting these lessons, and they're going to be a lot of fun. So I hope to see you on there.
Thank you, Dr. Henson. And I just want to remind everyone that we will have this recording on our CTA website. And are they able to see the slides again by chance?
We can give them to you, I think, and you can
perfect.
Post them, or we can post them on our website.
Okay, great. We will, if you send them to me, I'll post them in our handouts. And I'm just sharing the link to our website. It's cta.org/IPD trainings. And we have other webinars available if you guys want to check them out. And thank you all again. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Everyone stay safe and stay sane.
Thanks.